All right, and Christina should get on in a minute, but while we're waiting, I will call to order the Ravenna City Council, the public hearing for ordinance number 2020-65 on September 8th at 6:32 p.m. So Chelsea, would you read the ordinance?
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Ravenna, Title 8, Parking, Chapter 452, Parking General, Section 452.21.
I see that.
Restricted parking area, subsection A, by prohibiting parking on both sides of Highland Avenue between Vine Street and Diamond Street at all times.
All right, and this was brought to us by Mr. Finney and the mayor's administration. Bob, do you mind giving us an overview of your thoughts here? And we can dive into some of the public comments.
The resident on Highland Avenue was concerned with parking from the neighborhood bar that had been parked on the tree lawn for many, many years. And I brought it to council to see if they wanted to make a change. There is parking down the road slightly at the old Smith & Cowan Osborne Park for the patrons of Spano. There's also a house on the corner that's part of that property that can be utilized for parking in the driveway, which is off of Vine Street. If it is City Council's decision to place no parking signs, we have to memorialize it as an ordinance. And then the signs can be placed along that stretch of road.
And do you know why that stretch was left out? Looking at section 452 on the opposite side of Diamond, from Diamond to Oakwood, there's no parking signs, and then on the going the other way on East Highland from Cleveland all the way down to the other end, there's no parking. So why is there a specific reason that was left open for parking?
I have absolutely no idea. I hasn't been an issue until residents complained. So I don't know.
No.
The residents were concerned. Go ahead.
Is it been multiple residents or just the one resident? Because the one I'm looking at, it looks like it's the one resident. I believe it's Miss Taylor. And I'm looking at the pictures that she sent in, and it really doesn't appear that these cars are actually really in front of her home, in front of the other home, but she's complaining. So I guess I'm just questioning, is that particular owner complaining as well, or is Miss Taylor complaining for the whole street with the pictures that I'm looking at?
The property that Miss Taylor owns is an odd shaped parcel. It's a triangular parcel. It's a triangular shaped parcel with a lot of frontage. It's well over 100 feet of frontage. So basically in the one picture from where the old railroad ran across Highland, from that point to the west side of her property is all of her property. So the folks that would park on the tree lawn, that would be considered all of the 450 Highland. I believe that's the address, Nikki Taylor's property.
So
to my knowledge, that's the only one that has been.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So she owns that whole front part of that, correct?
Yes, yes.
So this is an odd situation in the sense that what we're asked to consider and what this public hearing is about parking on the street. The truth is, and I drive by that property all the time, there's frequently a car parked in the tree lawn, which should never happen, right? That resident would have had to have applied for a permit. And as far as we know, nobody in the city has ever applied for such a permit. So we've allowed that to happen for a great number of years. And I think there is the sense by the public that if we allow things to happen over and over again without doing or saying anything about it, then it becomes by default a legal thing to do. But what we're trying to do through this potential ordinance is restrict parking in the anticipation that should they develop the tree lawn so people aren't parking there any longer, people don't then choose to park on the street. Isn't that exactly where we are right now?
Correct. Currently, parking on the tree lawn is not permitted without a permit. And in well, since the ordinance was written, I believe it was 14, I've not approved anybody to park on the tree lawn.
So then the interesting question
Holds true to this. So,
we'll have to grapple with is, assuming we pass this and the cars continue to park on the tree lawn, they're not necessarily parked illegally because of our new ordinance. They're parked there illegally because even before we might pass an ordinance, it was illegal to park there. So is it going to be enforced from this point on?
Yeah,
and that's a good question. The police department would be the enforcement for illegal parking.
So I think for now, I think tree lawn, we all agree it's kind of a separate issue if we're focusing on the street parking here. And I actually asked Kay and Chief Wallace about the tree lawn parking a little bit on how that would be enforced. And, since it hasn't been enforced over the years, the thought process was that there needs to be a timeline coming from council on when Ravenna Police might keep an eye out for them and how that might unfold, whether with warnings or with actual tickets. But as it's written on the books right now, you're right, Rob, that they're not supposed to be parking on the tree lawn without the permit from the city. But since we mentioned Nikki, I do want to read, we have 3 submissions, and then we do have Kim Cipriano joining us, possibly Chip, I believe, to make a statement too. So let me read these for the record, and then we can take a comment from Chip. So the Nikki Taylor one, we should have all got, but it reads, I am emailing in regards to the parking situation on West Highland Avenue. My husband and I own the duplex directly across the street from Spanos, where cars have been parking on our tree lawn. We would like the city to put up a no parking sign to prevent bar patrons from continuing to park on our tree lawn. I attach photos in this email showing the wear and tear on our tree lawn and our 2 driveways from cars driving across it daily. It's also becoming a huge safety concern for us. Our view of the street is blocked when cars are parked on the tree lawn. It is very difficult to get in and out of our driveway. You can see in the photos attached that just one truck parked on the tree lawn blocks most of the road view to where we can't see oncoming traffic. We have also had scares with cars almost backing up into our house and our cars. Our driveways have also been blocked on several occasions. We are really hoping the city can do something about this. There is already a no parking sign on our side of the road, just 3 to 4 houses down. There's also additional parking for the bar's overflow a few hundred feet away at City Park behind McDonald's and across from the Big Dog. Thank you for your time. Sorry for the long email. I'm just really hoping this gets resolved. So that was the email from Nikki Taylor. The second email we got was from Bonnie Wright. And she says, I live on 450 West Highland Avenue, and I'm in favor of no parking on the street. Thank you. That was the end of her email. And then the last statement that we had was from Nicole Prater, property owner of 602 West Highland. She said, I'm sending this email in regards to parking on West Highland between Vine and Diamond. I own the property on the corner of West Highland and Gill on the opposite side of the street as Spanos. In a couple of years, I've owned the house. I've almost pulled out in front of someone coming down Highland towards me, towards Diamond at least a couple times. Every time it happened, there was a car in the tree lawn. The thing that worries me is this has happened so many times already, and I'm not even living in the house yet full time. Once this happens, how many times is it going to have to hit the brakes because I can't see? Then what happens when it's winter and I hit the brakes and slide and can't stop? Or what happens when I have my children in the car and I can't stop? All because I can't see around a car that has other places to park and close by at that. I feel for everyone's safety, not just mine or my kids, but for all my neighbors and their kids, it would be best to ban parking on the street and tree lawn. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Have a good day. So that was from Nicole Prater. So those are the 3 submissions that we had for this public hearing. Kim, if you're able to unmute, or Chip, I'm not too sure who we have on the phone, but I'll open it up.
Hello, this is Chip Cipriano.
Yep.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep, I can hear.
Yes.
You can't hear me then, right?
Now I
Yes.
can't.
Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yes.
This is all new to me, so I'm trying to do the Zoom thing. I guess my one question is, they want no parking from Vine Street on down. Why not start at the Cleveland Road on down? You know, those are devil strips there too that are being parked on by 3 different businesses. And then my other question is, nobody's parked on her where she planted her grass and stuff. I made sure that it just doesn't grow good there because it's downhill. There's no curb there. When it rains, all this grass seed would run off. That's not because of us parking there, because we haven't been parking there. It's because they did a terrible job of planting there. And then as far as not being able to see it, everyone's been parking there all these years. How many real accidents have there been? You know, has there been any real accidents from that? And I just can't. To me, it's like, if you're going to do it to everybody, because we'll just park at the house next door. You know, we'll park all over at the house. You know, I close the bar at 9 to 10 o'clock at night when the coronavirus is over. I could be open till 2:30. I have a 2:30 liquor license. I do that to be in favor with the neighbors. You know, but it's always something because we're a little bar, and then little bars have bad reputations. Even though there's no fighting, there's none of that kind of stuff going on. No loud music. It's just no matter what you do, they're going to find something to argue about. I have no parking here. The only thing I could do is park around the house. If you want to park in front of the Big Dog, I surely don't want my daughter or my wife walking down there at closing time and at nighttime when it's really dark to get in their car to drive away. And I also don't want when it's raining and snowing and it gets dark at 5 o'clock in the wintertime. So it's like, that's another issue that will be awfully difficult to deal with. And if you're going to want to go out to have a drink someplace, you're going to want to go walk in the snow, you know, all that feet down when you could just walk right there across the street. It would be terrible towards this little business here that I have here. So those are my little things. I mean, I just don't believe that, you know, nobody's parked there for her to ruin her grass. Her grass is ruined because it's on gravel. She tried to plant grass seed on gravel, and it's a downhill slope. If she really wanted to fix that up, you guys need to build a curb there. You need to, because nothing's going to grow right. You need to put a curb and everything else. You still hearing me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, okay. My phone just went off. I thought I was off. But as long as it's downhill and the rain is just going to wash everything away, I would say, and she's not putting, you have to dig up that gravel, put down some good dirt, and then you got to put some topsoil over that and then plant the grass seed. You can't just throw, like you're feeding chickens, some grass seed out there and expect it to turn out to grow out right, you know, especially in that kind of place. If you want to cancel this parking, all I have to say is they should cancel it everywhere. And not just on from Vine. You might as well just say this is aiming directly at Spano's Bar instead of just say that it's going to be down Vine Street all the way down. So that's about all I got to say.
Yeah, was there a reason why, since we are doing this, that we just didn't extend it for the whole road? Because the whole road itself is narrow. So I don't think you could park really anywhere on Highland Street.
I thought there was no parking the rest of the way down on Highland.
No, they park in front of all them stores down there. The Big Dog, the They have the antique store, which is a very nice store. So is the Big Dog, and they have like a computer store there,
They park
and they all park right
But they park in they have their own driveway in
driveway.
front of there.
Well, if you're allowed to park and you're right there, I have the house here. I'll start parking on the Devil Strip here then, across the street from them. If they're allowed to do it. I mean, like I said, if you build a curb there, and you know what? We've been parking closer to the house next door than we've been parking in front of their place. It's usually been
Apparently-
one to two cars at the most.
Hey,
Ever since they cleared
Chip,
the grass, no one's parked directly in front of their house.
she owns that piece. I asked that question a little bit ago, Chip, and she does own that piece of property that in front of the other house. Because I asked,
Doesn't the other people, don't the people in the house own that property?
no, she does, is what Bob said. Because that
How could,
the layout
how
of
could
that,
that be? If it's in front of her house, the other people's house, how could it be?
I guess it's the way it's made up on that particular plot because of the railroad that used to be there.
You guys are engaging in a moot point. Neither property owns the tree lawn.
Right.
City tree lawn.
Yeah.
So regardless of where that is, that's really not, the only time it comes into play is if the owner in front of that tree lawn wants to convert it into parking, there's a process to do that. So Chip, I mean, I mentioned this earlier, I don't know if you heard it, but regardless of who owns that, unless there's a permitted spot to park, it's now illegal for those cars to be parking there. It just hasn't been enforced. So
Well, there's no sign saying no parking. All the way down the street, there's one sign.
there is no parking on any tree lawn in the city unless it's been specifically permitted. And nobody has ever applied for such a permit. So parking on the tree lawn anywhere in the city is illegal.
All
Now,
right, so parking in front of the Big Dog on the Devil Strip, is that illegal?
if that's what
Yes.
they're doing, then it's illegal, yeah. Like I
It-
said.
it's-
Well, that's what they're doing. Even
It's
if
been
their
an
own
ordinance.
property.
Well, it's been an ordinance for a long time, but never been enforced.
All right, so parking in front of the on the Devil Strip of the Big Dog and the computer store there and the what's the other store there? The antique store. That's all not allowed. And I'm looking down the street right now and I'm seeing cars all up and down.
You're
But those are
correct.
Parking lots, correct? They're,
What?
help us out here. Do they have a Devil Strip in front of those businesses that they are parking on? Or are they a permitted parking area? Because I know some of those are complete gravel and I believe one is even a driveway that's concrete.
Yeah, I think
So does
you're
that
right.
make a difference? This is complete gravel over here too. You know, I mean,
It's
if you're
the
allowed to
devil's,
park, for instance, you own a property and you want to park, like I said, we'll just park in front of this house next door because I can do anything I want to with that house. And you're still gonna have cars parked in the Devil Strip. I mean, if they're allowed to do it because it's their property, I should be allowed to do it on this side of the street then.
well, they could be ticketed only unless they have a permit to do so.
I don't think all them three stores have permits. Do they have permits?
You're correct, they don't.
Part of
I mean,
their
I don't want to
parking
be
is on their
for any
property.
other businesses either, but I don't want to make it difficult for other businesses. I get along with everybody down there. I thought I got along with everybody here too, but I mean, to cut me out of every place of no parking any place hardly, except for the backyard here in the house next door, that can be all right during the slow season right now because of the coronavirus. But once this is over and people start coming out again, I will need parking again.
Chip, I don't think anyone's trying to cut you out of any parking. I think that anywhere on your property is perfectly fine to park. We just can't allow you to park on somebody else's property unless
Well, it's
they.
not their property. It's a Devil Strip. I don't care if she calls it her property or not. It's the city's property, and she doesn't do anything to keep it up. It's all
But-
gravel.
But the city as a whole
She might
hasn't.
say she is.
that doesn't allow parking on double strips anywhere in the city without proper permits.
Okay.
You could get a permit
so-
for your double strips, and we would be
So we
perfectly.
need to
fine
check
with
on, so we need to check on the permits on the other stores down there then. Correct?
Correct. And Bob,
Okay, I guess that's.
Yeah, you should be aware
Or-
that the zoning in that area is different than where you are. That is zoned industrial.
So Bob, is that the reason, moving down towards from Vine to Cleveland Road, that that's where that no parking, street parking that we're talking about tonight, is that why it ends there? Or is there a reason that we're kind of cutting it off at Vine? Why not take it down to Cleveland Road? I guess is the question.
Thanks.
As the mayor said, the industrial land does start along that rail corridor to Cleveland Road. But the other issue I see is some of the parking area that's being parked on at the Big Dog and then the other businesses are actually on their property. I don't know how much the cars overhang on what we would consider the devil strip, but
Right.
they are actually parking on their property. Maybe the bumpers or the trunks of the cars are overhanging, but they're also parking, the patrons of the Big Dog are parking there. And the patrons of the other business are parking there, and then antique shop, their patrons are parking there. So there is a difference when you're parking on a tree lawn off-site. So Chip, if you're interested in applying for tree lawn parking at that house, then our ordinance spells out the things that will need to be done and how you would have to improve it to get a permit. And then if I approve it, then it goes to the police department and they actually issue a yearly permit for that. It seems to me the slope between the sidewalk and the street at that house is a little steeper than a person might want to park when the weather's bad. But I just going by memory and I don't remember exactly. So we're sort of talking about two different things. We're talking about businesses that have patrons that park there and a business that has patrons that park off-site.
All right, well, I don't get it, so I'm gonna have to talk to somebody that could give me a little bit more input, like some kind of an attorney or something, to see what he can say about this. I understand not parking in front of there. I just don't understand the whole depth of the whole thing. There's other places in Ravenna too where I've seen people parking on the streets. Maybe nobody's complained about it, but I've seen it happen. So I'll start taking pictures of all them places too. I don't want to make a big. I keep thinking there's so much more important stuff to be dealing with than this stupid little parking issue. There's never been an accident here due to it, like they're saying. It's all new people that first move in. They're complaining. I mean, if you look back on the record, see how many cars have been. There's the one with the one girl talk about. That's a terrible place to turn into, anyways. It's a very narrow road. When any car that comes through there, coming from Highland Street and turning right, if there's a car there, it's a very tight squeeze. I think that's Gill Street. If you're turning right onto Gill Street, that's a tight squeeze there. If that's what she's talking about, I don't know for sure, but that could be a hazard that has nothing to do with us. I've seen it happen when there's no cars there, where cars almost ran into each other there. But see if you can come up with some accidents that has happened or whatever. And it's like, she has the right, I guess. We'll do something. I just want to make sure if we can't park there, I can park in the Devil's Strip of the house next door. That's all. And that's the property that belongs to the bar.
Yeah, and Chip, I appreciate your input tonight. And I think the street parking tonight is what we'll be voting in the regular city council meeting between Vine Street and Diamond. And I think we should have a larger conversation about the tree lawn parking and how that is going to be either enforced or rewritten, because as it's on the books now, tree lawn parking should be enforced without a permit, ticketing or warnings or whatever it might be. And that impacts not only across the street from Spanos, but on many streets across the city. So I do think that it should be a larger conversation on either rewriting that ordinance or talking about how we're going to enforce that in the future.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time. You guys have a great meeting.
Thanks, Chip.
All right. Bye-bye.
With that, is there anybody else that wants to make a comment? Kay, I know I saw you hop on, or Bob, is there any closing that you want to make, or anybody else have?
don't know. I always try to work with the residents to widen their driveway before, like I said, I've not approved any tree lawn parking. And I don't intend to, as long as they can widen their driveway. It makes neighborhoods makes them look bad, makes them look cheap. And most of their excuses as to why they want to park on the tree lawn is because they're lazy. You know, I'm specifically speaking of residents. We have areas in our town in which homes were built without driveways. So they have historically, since World War II, parked on the tree lawns. Kay and I have discussed this at length. We have no resolution for some of these areas. So we can certainly have more discussions. That's why I've done what I could to not allow tree lawn parking or allowed folks to widen their driveways. Most generally, they have. I recently had one on Central. Her excuse was lame. I told her no. She had the ability to widen her driveway. So I haven't heard back from her. But again, that's happened historically. There was one letter that was produced many years ago at the corner of Central and Walnut, I believe. Paul Jones signed a letter, and that man actually kept it. I believe that man's passed on and sold the house. So in essence, that letter allowing him to park on the tree lawn would have been for him specifically, it didn't run with the house, it would have ran with that resident. That's the only time I've seen a resident come up with a permit, so to speak, to park on the tree lawn.
And I also
That's all that I have.
I also think that there's a big misunderstanding too, as well as the difference between tree lawn parking and street parking in this discussion. I understand what Chip was saying, but I think that maybe he's not realizing the difference between the street parking, which is parking all four tires on the street on the side of the road, compared to pulling up on the tree lawn and parking. And this public hearing is for street parking on the street. And so I think that is something that, you know, we need to make sure everybody is clear on, that the discussion in the public hearing tonight is strictly on street parking. As far as the tree lawn goes, as Rob said earlier, it is a previous ordinance that already should be enforced citywide unless there's a permit. So it's two different topics that are getting mixed together.
Okay. Well, does anybody else have a comment tonight? I think that I do want to say, since it was brought up, that I don't think that residents are lazy. I think that they've been doing it for a long time. So I don't want that to be misconstrued anyway. That they've been parking on the Devil Strip or the tree lawn for a long time and have been allowed to do so without anybody writing tickets or warnings or anything, or trying to enforce it. So I think it does. We do need to have a conversation about that and how that looks moving forward. But
and Andrew, can I make a comment?
Yeah, please do.
And this is nothing against Chip or Spanos, but it's my feeling that I don't think it's the city's responsibility to provide parking for businesses. So with that said, you know, I don't believe in tree lawn parking in any instance. I just think it makes the city look junky. I don't know, like I said, that's my opinion.
We'll have
But if we're gonna but if we're gonna allow it, it has to be straight across the board. It can't be double standard for this person or for this area. It has to be citywide.
Exactly. Okay, well, if there's, is there any other?
And, yes, and pertaining to that, I was going to say, I was thinking it should be a lot, well, I know it hasn't been enforced, but I was thinking maybe it should be enforced. That way it goes, as Kay mentioned, across the board everywhere and not in certain parts of the city. That way nobody can complain that some people are targeted. I mean, I've heard complaints of that over the years, which I know it wasn't, that's beside the point, but I was thinking maybe it should be enforced only because it's been an ordinance for decades.
Okay, well, in regards to street parking, if everyone's okay, I'm gonna close out this public. No, let me ask one more time. There's no other comments for tonight in regards to the street parking? Okay. Well, I'll close out this public hearing at 7:03 p.m. Okay. And at 7:03, I'll open up the regular Ravenna City Council meeting for September 8th.
Pledge of Allegiance, and I can't do it.
Yeah, so first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, or the moment of meditation and silence. All right, would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United
States of America and to the republic
for which is one nation, under God, indivisible,
With liberty, justice.
for all.
Chelsea, would you call the roll?
Mr. Kelfi,
Sorry, here.
Ms. West,
Here.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Here.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Here.
All right, next item on the agenda is the approval of meeting minutes for regular city council meeting of August 3rd. Was there any questions or comments related to those?
None.
Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chelsea, you want to go over the communications that we received?
We had a letter from Spencer Gross on behalf of Ohio Realtors expressing their support to make the Ravenna point of sale requirement a voluntary option. And then we had a letter from Safer Futures announcing their 10th annual Hope in a Handbag fundraiser to provide services for survivors of domestic violence.
Okay, thanks. You all should have received those. No delegations from the public tonight. And you all should have received the report of officials. Is there any questions or comments regarding those? Hearing none, do we have a motion to accept those?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Committees will start next Monday, excuse me, the 14th. Starting off with utilities, Mr. Moskin.
I'll say yes, because there could possibly be something.
Information systems, Ms. Wood.
I am anticipating something for committee, at least one item.
Thanks. And planning, Mr. Karas.
We have 2 items on the agenda tonight. I don't have anything for a meeting on Monday unless Bob or someone else does. I don't anticipate having a meeting.
Okay. Committee of the whole will be.
We will have a meeting.
Sorry.
Oh, Bob says, okay, we will have a meeting next Monday. Thanks, Bob.
Committee of the Whole will be on September 21st at 7 p.m. Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael.
Yes, I have several items on tonight's agenda, and I am planning a meeting for next week.
And Streets and Sidewalks, Mr. Harper.
I have no items for this evening. I have not heard of anything for committee next week unless you want to start the conversation about the tree lawn parking. We can go ahead and put that on for next week.
Okay. Personnel, Mr. Calfee.
No plans for a committee meeting for next week.
Thanks.
Excuse me, there will be one, Dr. Calfee.
Thank you.
And Community and Economic Development, Ms. West.
We have one item on the agenda this evening and planning on meeting next week.
Okay. And the last one on here at Cemetery, Mr. Harper and Mr. Moskin, if you don't mind. We had a meeting last Wednesday. It was more of a conversation between the township and the city to discuss some of the points. I think, Mayor, if you want to make any comments, Mr. Samino is there as well, who's sitting next to me. If you want to jump in as well to make any comments. But I think the takeaway was there could be conversations moving forward about at least one issue that I was, it sounded like they were willing to at least have a conversation about, which is healthcare and what is offered to employees at the cemetery. But that was the key takeaway. Unfortunately, not a lot of, I don't want to say substance, but not a lot of back and forth in terms of what they were looking for. They're still looking to completely pull out of the cemetery, at least as they were having the conversation. And I told them that wasn't really a conversation starter for me or council. So Mayor or Mr. Samino, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the conversation. I think there was other ways that we could work together, but it's a give and take, not give.
I think that this was designed, I don't want anybody to feel offended that they weren't invited, but we designed this so that there was not a quorum present of council people or township trustees. So there was only one trustee there. With that, this will eventually lead to a meeting of our council and the trustees, the Ravenna Township trustees. Just as we approve the budget, you'll have to get together to make decisions on how you want to address the problems. We did agree to look at the spending and to see if there were ways to save. And we also talked about possibly efficiencies. Hank believes that they have too much staff there.
Oh, boy.
And I'm not buying into that. I'm just telling you that's one of the issues that was discussed. And Kay and I have are in the process, I don't know if she got a chance to do it today or not, to set up a meeting with the sexton up there, Mark Gabriel, so that we could talk to him about this to give us a little more, shed a little more light on it for us. I know you folks are already involved up there, have a good handle on it. We need to get a good handle also as we progress through this, because we have to give permission for them to drop out. And we did take the opportunity to talk about other things that we should be discussing besides just the cemetery, that we need to be taking looks at the JED and look at least seeing what the financial cost of a fire district might be.
Okay, how many years, since they want to drop out, how many years did they want to phase in? Was it several or?
It was 3.
Oh.
In their written proposal, it was 3.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that that's what's going to happen, but that's what.
Yes. No, I understand you're not in favor of depleting employees, but just know that's not a good idea. I'm not surprised it was brought up.
Well, Mr. Semino and Mr. Huff, I didn't mean to cut you out too. They were both at the meeting. But if you have any,
Thoughts? I mean, Henry was there as the trustee. Ms. Pittman was there as their kind of their financial officer. And then Chad Murdoch was there as their counsel. Chad nor I really said anything other than I kind of gave a historical background as far as the cemetery. And I'm not quite sure if you guys are aware of it, but back in 1993, 94, the township sued to relieve themselves of any responsibility regarding the Maple Grove Cemetery. And the basis for that was there was statutory law that indicated that if the city surrounded the cemetery, the city became responsible for the cemetery. And Judge Cainrad so ruled in 1994. He ruled that the township was no longer responsible for the Maple Grove Cemetery, and it was solely the responsibility of the city. What happened then was that a couple of years passed, and the township approached the city and said that they wanted to form a union cemetery, wherein they became involved in the maintenance of the cemetery, which kind of was backtracking on what they had done through the courts. So it turned out that the agreement came about that 2/3 responsibility to the city, 1/3 responsibility to the township. And then that brought about the representation. One representative from the township, 2 representatives from the city. And it's carried on like that until we've gotten, although I'm sure that Henry has been very diligent, perhaps, in trying to cut expenses. I think that's kind of a platform he's taken for a number of years. And I think that was part of it. But, you know, Chad wrote the letter indicating that should we consent, that they would be able to withdraw. But if we don't consent, they don't have the ability to withdraw. Initially, there was a 2-year out, and Henry just got on the table while we're talking 5 years. But I don't believe that any of those options seem to have been accepted by Andrew or the mayor, and, you know, other than just acknowledge that they said them. The bottom line to me was that Henry was frustrated over costs, expenses, and felt as though there was not good management of the cemetery. I think that as you responded to, they want to see less people there, less part-time people, whatever, thinking that during the winter there should be less people working, whatever. And I think that's the main thrust when they're not capable of withdrawing from the township trustee or from the Maple Grove Cemetery. I think they want to have more of a say in, they want more direction and more accomplishment in trying to run a tighter ship as far as the cemetery is concerned. I think Andrew tried to pull that out of them because, you know, we weren't necessarily going anywhere with the idea that, you know, we're going to let you go. But so Andrew tried to bring out from them, or at least from Henry and perhaps Ms. Pittman, where they wanted to go and, you know, what ideas they had as far as cost reduction. And I think that's kind of how it ended, or that was at least our interpretation of where we ended. I believe it was their interpretation of where it ended. And then there was the agreement to perhaps meet again. And once councils had talked, trustees had talked, or council had talked, the trustees had talked, then to get back together and see what avenues there might be to be more fiscally responsible. And I think that Henry felt as though no matter how much he protested, the fact that he only had 1 vote and the city had 2 votes, he didn't necessarily feel as though his voice was in relation to cost cutting.
I'd like to point out, they also picked up the responsibility for the Grandview Cemetery, and that was dumped on them by the courts. And so they have picked up that responsibility. That's part of the equation that they're looking at in total cost of what they're doing.
In that regard, the same thing happened to them that happened to the city. they surround that cemetery. And as a result of that, the law requires that they become responsible for that cemetery.
So hopefully we get some updates from Hank after the township trustees meet. But at least wanted to give you an update as to what the conversation was like.
Do we have a meeting?
Go ahead, sorry.
Do we have a meeting between the council and township anywhere on the horizon?
We were going to plan one. I think I'm going to get some feedback from Hank on what the other two trustees said during their meeting when he goes to give some feedback. My thought was we could have a conversation or at least an update for committee meetings next week. For everybody. Okay. More to come.
They're meeting tonight also. They meet on Tuesdays.
Okay, well, let's hop into first reading of ordinances.
I just have a comment pertaining to the cemetery.
Okay.
Outside of what was said. At the present time, Mark Gabriel is looking into getting some type of a leaf machine. What they have just doesn't work anymore because of its age. It's not very efficient. So I just wanted to make that comment. So he's in the process of looking for something to have in process before the leaves do fall, which I know it's not that far off.
Okay. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Well, then we'll hop in the first reading of ordinances, starting with ordinance number 2020-90.
An ordinance to increase the appropriation to the fire department's vehicle maintenance account 101.109.52500 by the sum of $15,000 and declaring an emergency.
This is sponsored by Public Health and Safety. Ms. Michael?
Yes, this is from the fire department, and this is definitely needed. We talked about it at committee. I don't know if anybody has any additional questions for the chief because he is on. Really not much left to talk about.
Yeah.
There's no questions, then do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Motion pass.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin, Mr. Moskin, can you hear me? Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas.
Yes.
All right. Ordinance number 2020-90 is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-91.
An ordinance appropriating the sum of $1,500 from the Capital Improvement Fund 65-74 to account 553.557.56485 for the necessary repair to the roof at the front foyer fire station and declaring an emergency.
Also Public Health and Safety, Ms. Michael?
Once again, we talked about it. The roof is in bad shape. I don't know if Chief Chappell has any different updates from the last time. Are we still going on with the repair versus replacing right now? Last time you felt pretty comfortable about doing that. Nothing's changed?
The repair, that the estimate I got from Warren Fire and I put in my monthly report that came back at $20,000, and that was to replace all the decking that's on the roof currently, and to its entirety. Castle Roofing is the one who did the repair to the parapet. They said for the $1,500 that they could get us by with going in and resealing the seam that's on the left side of the metal decking to get us by for the next year or so.
Okay.
So that's where we stand with that.
Okay, I just want to make sure nothing's changed in between time. So, okay. Does anybody have any additional questions, or are you okay to move it forward?
Did you, Chief, did you move forward with just the improvement for the $1,500 improvement, or has that
Yeah.
not?
Well, I didn't have the estimate, so that's why I was waiting for today to come back at the 20,000. Like I said, the $1,500 will not give us any guarantee. And I know we've had us as a department has asked for quite a bit with the purchase of our truck and whatnot. I don't know if you guys feel that you would want to invest that $20,000 now, or take our chances with winter coming up on us to see if that $1,500 gets us through at least the next year.
Well, that was my question, if we wanted to amend the 1,500 to 20,000. And I guess Mr. Huff, I don't know if we could, if that's a possibility with the way the budget looks, or Mr. Chappell, if that's what we can do.
Well, here, I would prefer to go through and replace the roof. And I am, if this helps at all, the hose that we appropriated $12,000 for, we actually end up spending $7,500. So I'm actually going to be giving back to the capital improvements, the CI account, roughly $4,500, almost $5,000. So, if that entices anybody to say, yeah, I would like to join my thoughts and say, I would like to have the roof replaced versus repaired. I just think we're putting off the inevitable. It's just if it's a timely thing of whether the city could absorb that further expense.
Well,
have you written any grants or anything lately, Mark, to kind of offset any of these other costs? Is there anything?
There's a grant coming around that is actually through Firehouse Subs, and they will go up to $20,000 is what they will appropriate, but they're pretty much leaning more towards like EMS or fire equipment, not necessarily repairs to a building or anything like that.
Well, I know, but would that maybe offset some other costs down the road? There is quite a bit that has come out, I know, with fire lately.
Right. Yes.
So I just don't want to be so proactive that you're going to cut yourself short and, something else comes up. I don't know.
There is some things I as far as grants go, I like I said, there's a couple grants that we would like to put in place. And then also with turnout gear is going to be coming around the corner of next year. And that's what we're going to put in through FEMA for replacement of turnout gear and some other equipment that we have. And hopefully that we would benefit from that, because again, that's going to be another expense in 2021 that if we don't receive grant funding, that we're going to have to take out of CI again. So I keep my eyes open and I see whatever's out there. Like I said, the only one I know that's like coming up real soon is the one that's from Firehouse Subs, and they are very. I know there's a lot of municipalities in our area that have received funding from them. So I'm very hopeful that we're able to receive some stuff that would offset, between $15,000 and $20,000 of the merchandise that we need for our department, so we wouldn't have to continue to come back to capital improvement money.
And Mark, to my understanding, you said that if this $1,500 is spent, that it's not a guarantee.
Correct.
That there might possibly be a problem during the winter, depending on what type of weather we have. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is 100% correct. Now, what Warren Fire did do that Castle did not do when they were out here to give us an estimate, the flashing that comes up off that parapet onto that metal decking. They told me that there was only 3 inches of flashing going up underneath that decking. Since they had to expose it to do a good review and give us a proper estimate, since he had to rip the material out, he put new material in and did not charge us for it. They did it. He said, I just did it because I had to expose it. I'm not going to leave it that way. Since they ran an extra 5 inches of flashing up underneath there, this last heavy rain that we had this past weekend, we did not take in any water, believe it or not. So, but again, that's not a guarantee that we're going to make it through a winter without having another issue.
I'm going to kind of raise some big concern procedurally. Conceptually, it would be my preference to fix it right, assuming we have the funds to do so. Procedurally, I have problems inflating, well, maybe that's not the right word, but increasing an amount from $1,500 to $20,000 at the night that the ordinance is presented without any backing, that is any estimate or any other way that the 20,000 is going to be spent, and clearly identifying what the difference is. I know you've explained it, but I would have preferred that we had the $20,000 allocation before us tonight, and not to just simply amend. So one possibility is to put this on hold and put it through the next round. That's not going to be a problem. And then allocate the 20,000 if we have it available. And I guess that's something the finance director we need to talk about. But I don't think I can approve the 20,000 tonight, because I don't think it would be a fair procedural process.
And I understand that. And actually, Castle Roofing, who was going to give us the repair for $1,500, they came out in early August and were going to give us, an estimate to replace do the same replacement that Warren Roofing gave us. They have not. He came out to measure, but to this date, and I've called several times, I have not received any correspondence back saying this is what it's going to cost or anything. So, but I'm not opposed to getting a couple other companies that that do commercial roofing and see where they come in at. It might be a little bit more, it might be a little less.
Okay, so if you're going to do this, then I think we should probably hold up and put this back in committee, and make sure that you get everything you need and we have it all in front of us for the next meeting. Are you able to do that? To put a hold on this?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, we got a couple months before the snow comes down, but I think within the next couple days or weeks, that I can at least try to get some vendors out there to say, will you give me a price on this? And I can even get back with Castle for one last time and say, at least give me an estimate based on what you measured, so I at least have something proposed to you other than just one vendor.
Yeah, and then Brian, in the meantime, I guess, see where we are, if that's going to cut us too short for this fiscal year, or where we stand with this. But I don't want to keep going back and forth and back and forth. I'd like to try to have everything, the next meeting, and then so we can proceed with the process on voting on it. So I think, Brian, we're going to just put this item, we're going to put it back in committee and not vote on it tonight.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Even the $1,500 now is going to be made at this point, right? We're getting rid of $1,500
back.
Okay.
So just for the sake of formality, I'd like to make the motion to send this back to committee.
So moved.
Need a second.
Second.
And that's just a voice vote.
Right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So we'll move on to ordinance number 2020-92.
An ordinance to appropriate an additional $70,000 for the purchase of self-contained breathing apparatus from account 553.557.55715 for the fire department and declaring an emergency.
This is also
And
public.
again, yeah, this is another item from fire department, and it's an item that we need. We talked about it in committee, and there's really, I mean, they're required to have them. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but there's really self explained here pretty well.
Well, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Yes. Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Finally, a motion to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-93.
An ordinance to appropriate a $5,000 contribution to a stormwater education grant for Ravenna High School from account 650.650.52303 and declaring an emergency.
All right, and this is sponsored by Utilities. Moskin?
Yes, this goes back toward the EPA. The EPA requires a portion, I've never heard of an exact amount, contributed toward educational purposes from the stormwater money returned. And that stormwater will go toward the education and through the high school. There's going to be a decking built and also a trail. And there is a possibility down the road, it's not cut and dry yet, but a possibility the Parks and Recreation Department might be using this for possibly summer camps in the future years. So it could be a multi-purpose.
Any questions on this ordinance? Sorry, I was muted.
That's fine.
Well, hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-94.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Ravenna, Ohio, Part 10, Streets, Utilities, and Public Services Code, Chapter 1070, Point of Sale Inspections to replace shall request with may request in 1070.01, change building official to city engineer throughout as shown in Exhibit A, and repeal 1070.99 penalty and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by Planning. Mr. Karas?
Yeah, so, and this was what the realtors were putting their support behind. We're basically changing this to a voluntary act when a point of sale is made for an inspection. So we're changing the word shall to may request in 107001. Where the building official is referred to, we want to change that to the city engineer. And then finally, since it is a voluntary act, we want to remove the section that talks about the penalty.
Any questions on this? Hearing none, do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-95.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Ravenna, Ohio, Part 14, Building and Housing Code, Chapter 1448, metal siding to bring the section into code compliance with the National Electric Code as shown in Exhibit A and repeal 1448.99 penalty and declaring an emergency.
And this is also sponsored by planning, Mr. Karas.
This is a housekeeping type item to make sure our city code is in compliance, or that the aluminum or metal siding is bonded properly according to national standards. We need to update our own ordinance.
Okay, any questions on this?
Yeah, is this referring to actually steel siding or aluminum? Because I know steel is used once in a while, but not very often.
Well, the ordinance
Refers to any.
and metal, so as far as I can.
Go ahead, Rob.
No, I was just saying, steel is a metal and is defined as aluminum or metal, so I don't know of any siding made of steel, but
I've just known of some over the
that's-
years, but okay.
Anything that can conduct electricity, that would be of a metallic, aluminum, metal, anything of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions on this? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Yes, second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
Okay, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-96.
An ordinance to appropriate $3,750 to pay Main Street Ravenna for the landscape project from Fund 215 and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by Community and Economic Development. Ms. West?
This is for the downtown district plan landscape project, and we already had funds set aside for this in Fund 215.
Any questions on this? Or do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Yes, if you call my name. I didn't hear.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, and a motion to pass?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-97.
An ordinance to appropriate $1,500 for the purchase of a capital asset program to track the city's capital assets from the 553 CI fund and declaring an emergency.
And this is sponsored by our finance director, Mr. Huff.
Yes, we had talked about this in committees. This one is just to get this one specifically for the audit to get our capital asset records in an auditable format that's safe and is backed up every year. It's pretty minimal cost to do that for.
Any questions?
None.
Motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Was that Ms. West?
It was Cheryl.
Oh,
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
and finally, a motion to pass the ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelfy,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
That ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-98.
An ordinance providing for the issuance bonds in the amount not to exceed $3,100,000 for the purpose of refunding certain outstanding revenue bonds which were issued for the purpose of acquiring, constructing, equipping, and installing a library facility for Reed Memorial Public Library, improving and renovating an existing library facility, therefore authorizing a bond purchase agreement and bond placement agreement as appropriate for the sale of the bonds, authorizing a supplemental lease between the issuer and the lessee, providing for the lease of the project by the issuer to the lessee, authorizing the execution of a supplemental trust agreement securing payment of the bonds, authorizing a preliminary offering circular and offering circular relating to the bonds, authorizing relating matters, and declaring an emergency.
Right. Thanks for reading that. This is sponsored by our finance director, Mr. Huff. Did you write that too?
Yeah, that was all me. I just wrote that. I think about those things all the time. That was quite a title. I wish they could have got that a little bit shorter for you, Chelsea. Sorry about that. Wow. Well, basically, this was explained when Amanda Gordon came to that one committee meeting, and this is the library's portion. We did our own portion. The library also did their portion. Their board is also approving this, but we have to approve this as well. But again, this is going to save them a lot of money and interest, just like it's saving us when we approved our debt issuance. So it just needs the official council approval on these as well.
And just for everyone's benefit, this doesn't cost the city anything. We're just the agency that they go through to get this approved, right?
That is correct. Yeah, the libraries do not have the authority without city council's approval. And it's the same way statewide, and that's just the way it works. You're right. It's not going to cost us anything. But it still helps the community out and saves them money, so that's good for all of us.
Was there any other questions on this? Do we have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings?
So move.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael, Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
second,
Second.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Finally, do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted, and thanks again, Brian and the Finance Department looking into those. So the next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-99.
An ordinance appropriating the sum of $2,585.48 for the city's June unemployment liability obligation based on the notice of benefits paid by the state of Ohio and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Huff?
Yeah, that title was a little bit better, wasn't it, Chelsea? So yeah, this one, we just keep getting these coming in. The next one's the same way. These seem to be mitigating. Most people are kind of falling off this unemployment list. I anticipate we should be getting all this money back with the CARES grant money that we're receiving. So we'll be reassigning all this money anyway, but most of this relates to your Parks and Rec employees that were laid off during the pandemic. I don't know if we'll be getting an August one or not. I have not heard.
Any questions for Mr. Huff?
None.
We have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And a motion to adopt the emergency clause.
So move.
Second.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes,
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
A motion to pass the ordinance.
So move.
second,
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
West,
yes,
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is adopted. The next item on the agenda is ordinance number 2020-100.
An ordinance appropriating the sum of $1,132.84 for the city's July unemployment liability obligation based on the notice of benefits paid by the state of Ohio and declaring an emergency.
All right, Mr. Huff, this was also sponsored by our finance director.
And nothing new on this one. It's a little bit less than the June one, so as you see that people are falling off of it. So, yep. Again, yeah, hopefully we won't have too many more of these coming up in the end of the year.
Okay. Any questions? We have a motion to waive the 3 separate readings.
So moved.
Second,
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to adopt the emergency clause?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So move.
Second,
Ms. Wood,
Yes.
Ms. West,
yes.
Mr. Kelfi,
Yes.
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
And that is everything on first reading of ordinances. We have nothing on the agenda tonight for second reading, but we do have one item on third reading, which is the public hearing that we just had, which is ordinance number 2020-65.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the city of Ravenna, Title 8, Parking, Chapter 452, Parking Generally, Section 452.21, Prohibited and Restricted Parking Area, Subsection A, by prohibiting parking on both sides of Highland Avenue between Vine Street and Diamond Street at all times.
This is sponsored by Streets and Sidewalks. Mr. Harper, I don't know if you want to make a statement or.
Yeah, just want to make clear to anybody that is listening, tuned in, that this ordinance addresses on-street parking only. This has nothing to do with the tree lawn parking. That is a total separate issue that we will bring forth soon and have a discussion on that. So again, this is just for street parking. Just want to make sure that that's clear.
I was just wondering if this should be extended sometime to Cleveland Road.
I don't believe that there is street parking up to Cleveland Road. I believe that that's already prohibited.
So-
Pretty much on Highland. This was the only section left on Highland that did not have street parking prohibited.
Okay.
So this would make all of Highland, you cannot park on the street.
Well, in that one section.
This ordinance is just for Vine to Highland.
But once this ordinance goes into effect, I believe what Ms. West was asking was, this says no street parking, then it will, the entire street, all of
Oh,
Highland covered.
from Linden to Diamond.
Correct.
Okay.
No, I don't believe that is the case. This only section on Highland that will be no parking after this ordinance will be from Vine to Highland.
Vine to
Like,
Diamond.
Diamond, sorry.
Prohibited parking on Highland in the other sections, though.
Correct. You're right, Cheryl.
Okay.
Mr. Finney, are you still there? Can you clarify? If I could just real quick read the ordinance 45221 in regards to Highland Avenue. Parking is prohibited on both sides of Highland Avenue between Chestnut Street and Cleveland Road, and on both sides of West Highland Avenue between North Diamond and Oakwood Street. So as this is reading now, between Vine and Cleveland Road, that would still allow street parking. Is that correct? As I'm reading it, or do I have that wrong?
You have that wrong. If it's in the code, then it's prohibited.
Okay.
That ordinance is specific to prohibited street parking. And I don't have that ordinance in front of me, but as you read, that's our ordinance.
Right.
Whether it's signed that way or not, most likely it is. I'm just looking to see if I have it, but I don't have it with me.
Okay. So all
So
of,
it sounds like it is already from Chestnut to Vine and Diamond to Oakwood. So this would then complete no street parking from Chestnut to Oakwood.
Correct.
okay. All right. Any other questions on this?
Thank you.
Well, hearing none, we've already gone through the 3 separate readings. Do we have a motion to pass the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Harper,
Yes.
Mr. Moskin,
Yes.
Mr. Kelsey,
Yes.
Ms. West,
Yes.
Ms. Michael,
Yes.
Mr. Karas,
Yes.
Ms. Wood.
Yes.
All right, well, that concludes everything on 3rd reading of ordinances. Is there any other old business or new business? Well, Mr. Mayor, do you have any remarks tonight?
Yes, I do, just a few. If you have any friends or people that you know that have not completed the census form, we're running out of time. That's going to end very soon. And we're generally at about 70%. I don't know how they're doing going door to door. I'm sure they're picking up some, but please encourage anybody. The funding that we get depends on how the census turns out. So please keep that in mind. Just by way of information, there was a group that was registering voters. Last Friday, they had a permit, and it's Mothers for Change. And they'll be doing that off and on up until they pass the date for it. And I think that's pretty close, to tell you the truth, with that. The new phone system has been turned on, and so far, we're not having too many problems with it. We did get our problem fixed with the problems with the internet, and that has been working well. Just by way of information, if you read the paper, you'll notice that Kent has one street that they close, I think, on the weekends. And it's, I don't know the name of the street, but it's the one that the Puffer Belly's on, or it's got a different name now.
I think it's Franklin, isn't it?
Yes, you're right. You're right.
Yeah,
That's correct,
between
Rob.
Like, where the old Puffer Belly was and
Yeah.
Ray's. Yeah, I was actually there Friday night.
Okay, I had Sandy from 1888 came over to talk to me about the possibility of doing something like that in town here. This is something that you may want to think about or maybe even discuss at the committee meetings that are coming up. First of all, identifying an area, and then secondly, they've got a wealth of restaurants that butt onto that street. The way we're laid out downtown, we don't have those large number of restaurants with that. So I'm not sure of the effectiveness of it. I'm going to call and talk to Ken about it. But I wanted you to be aware that we did have a request to do that here. I want to remind everybody that Jack Ferguson will be honored by naming honorary way in his name. And that will be on the September 19th. That's a Saturday. It's the regular Balloon Affair Saturday day. That's at 11 in the morning. And it's right outside the door here. If you're able to come, Jack served on council for quite a while and chaired the Balloon Affair for umpteen million years. He's done a lot for the community. We already talked about the cemetery. I think I'll stop there for right now. Thank you.
Then I will adjourn tonight's meeting until Monday, October 5th is when our regular city council meeting will be again. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.